What AFC tight end is set to make his mark in 2026? How do we handle a forgotten receiver in the AFC South that might be in for a nice bounce back? And what are we doing with Jeremiah Love in redraft? What are we doing with him in dynasty leagues? What are we doing with him or with the 101 pick with rookie drafts just over a month away? We've got a great show for you tonight. We have not only Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football here, the 6-time FFPC Main Event League champion. Bill Hollywood rejoins the show. We'll talk Rome Odunze. We'll talk Sam Laporta. We'll talk about it all here on High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Extra Reps, which starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome into the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Extra Reps presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, FFPC Insider Access, and the Fantasy Football Players Championship. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about Lamar Jackson's bounce back. We're going to talk about Sam Laporta's sore back, and we're going to talk about bringing sexy back with Bill Hollywood, the 6-time FFPC Main Event League champion, joining up with us to chop up those topics and so much more. If you want to connect with us on X at HSFF or at Eric Balkman, KFFSC.com is where to register and draft in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, which is what Ferrell runs. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Post on Facebook at facebook.com/HSFFO. Or shout out to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob. Want to bring in the co-host with the most, ladies and gentlemen. He runs the KFFSC to some critical acclaim. He is the one, the only, the incomparable Ferrell Elliott. Good evening, sir.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Doing good, man. Excited to bring on our guest tonight, who hung out with us for a little bit on Wednesday night's show with one Steve Ezzo, and
he was in the chat room, wasn't he?
He was, yes, and he's here to share his wares and share his takes, everything that is going on with fantasy football in the mind of one Bill Hollywood. Please welcome in the 6-time FFPC League champion, Bill Hollywood. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
How are you? How you doing, Ferrell?
Really good to see you, brother. How's your brother doing, by the way?
Good, really good. Yeah.
Tell him I said hello.
He's getting ready to start studying again.
This is good, Ferrell, because I told Bill before we went on the air that the reason I wanted him on Extra Reps this week was because he was throwing around the R word, retirement. About fantasy football, the last couple of chats in the last couple of chat rooms for our shows. And I said, well, this won't do. We have to have Bill Hollywood come back. So I figure if we can get him to chop it up and get him excited to talk about fantasy football, we'll not only save a great fantasy football career, but we'll educate a bunch of people out here tonight that are watching about how to become a better fantasy football player and become a fellow 6-time FFPC Main Event League champ. That's like 3 birds with 1 stone on the show, Ferrell.
It's true facts, Balky, and Billy Hollywood is going to retire from fantasy football much in the same way that Aaron Rodgers has retired.
Yeah, right.
But there's even guys like Brady talking about making a comeback. I remember when Jim Brown talked about coming back when he was like in his 50s. It was, Sports Illustrated back then was sending that out. That's, Bill Hollywood, I'll come up there and
I
love
love fantasy football just as much as you guys, but there's just been times where I just know, like, there's times where, like, I used to play hockey and all of a sudden, boom, I just quit playing, quit watching. I used to play a lot of golf, and just sometimes when it ain't clicking, I just kind of like
I'm looking at your record from the KFFSC 2025, and let me tell you, my friend, it was clicking.
And I never.
You may not be happy with the results, but it was clicking.
And I never really. I just all of a sudden, like football season got over, and I was like, that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, and then all of a sudden I'd always watch you guys' show, and I'm still, trying to get back into it. And I was like, because if you got to give it 100%, especially when you have a partner, and you
Justin May.
And so, Justin May, I got two really good partners. I got one for the Kentucky with Justin, and I like him as a partner just because, he just won't do any mistakes, and my brother, I love my brother as a partner. I mean, he watches every single game, he with his son, and, he's right on top of everything. And so, so I mean, but I also have to do my part, and so a lot of my part is what we did for years, me and my brother, is I watch all the games after the season.
Oh, wow.
And so then he watches all the games during the season. So I would draft the team and he would manage the team. We did that for years. And, we got to a point where we started winning, but then we want more teams. And so he wanted to draft. He didn't want to always just not be drafting. He's like, hey, I really want to get a lot of entertainment by drafting. So then he's just started really kind of taking off, doing really well himself. So, I mean, he's done. We, can't complain.
I think the other thing too, like I don't know how many years ago it was like 5 or 6 years ago. I just had an awful fantasy year, and I worked really hard that year. Not that I don't work really hard every year, but I just remember just being really exhausted after that year, and it was terrible. Like I lost so many championship games. I don't think I won a single league, and I was just like, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't do it anymore. That lasted all of about a month.
Yeah, right.
And then I just couldn't wait to get back in it. I just think we need a break from it from time to time, just to step away, touch grass. Remember, there's other sports, there's other things in life, not besides sports. And I just, it was one of those things where I think I just subconsciously recharged my battery without realizing I was doing it. And then, March, April, I think it was a draft that rolled around. I'm like, who am I kidding? I love this too much to give it up.
Yeah. My brother,
and by the way, and I'll say this too, the following year, one of my best seasons ever too. So it just goes.
That's why we put in a Super Sunday draft for you guys, where you wouldn't get to that. And we're still waiting for Bill Hollywood to come. Bill, if you ever did retire, we would hire the French actor Jean Reno to come.
Oh, yeah.
Here, and to represent you. We'd tell everybody that's Bill Hollywood. We'd have to teach him your unique and flowing accent. That's it. He'd have to lose some. But anyway, that's just.
Right. I did watch that draft the other night for the Big Gorilla. Yeah. And, one guy I'll tell you who's sticking out to me that I can build a team around that I feel like is Breece Hall. I feel like.
Ooh.
Where he's kind of going in the third, I can do things with Breece Hall. I can either go running back, wide receiver, have Breece be my number 2, and I'm pretty happy with that. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to go tight end, you can go tight end, wide receiver, Breece Hall. And so Breece Hall was just a guy that kind of stuck out to me going, wow, I can really work my team around that guy.
You're a current contrarian to a lot of the believers in Breece Hall, and I like that. I think
I'll tell you this: it takes a special breed to draft a New York Jet.
I usually don't. I usually never do. But this might be that first time where sometimes when I look at, because I think Breece Hall has the talent. I think he's a really talented running back.
He's
it's going just that you're looking at drafting a Jet, and that's kind of tough. But he's just a guy that kind of sticks out to me. Going.
It is interesting, Bill, that you bring up Hall, because right now, Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo on X, fantasymojo.com. Get a subscription to Fantasy Mojo if you are playing in the FFPC, if you haven't already. He's got him in the Big Gorilla over the last week and a half on average at the 309, which means you could start off your draft technically with Jonathan Taylor, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brock Bowers, 3 different positions to go with Breece Hall there. And then in the second round, you could go with Justin Jefferson or James Cook or Amari Hampton. I mean, I guess technically you could. Well,
so
yeah,
if you
go with Loveland, but you'd have to overdraft him.
I feel like there's a difference in the FFPC when you can have like a guy like Kyron and wait just a little bit longer, right? But he's a guy that might be able to get you 2 touchdowns, but he can lay you up an egg. And so to me, Breece Hall is more of a could be more consistent than Kyron, where I can't lose games in the FFPC. I can't afford to lose many. So I feel like maybe Kyron can maybe lose you more next year than what Breece Hall is going to lose.
You know, the other thing that's nice about Hall, and obviously we'll see what the Jets do in the draft in a few weeks.
Right, for sure.
He doesn't have Blake Corum. Like, he's got Braylon Allen, who missed, so much time last year. And I don't necessarily think Allen is Corum. He certainly doesn't have the draft capital that Corum does. And now if the Jets draft somebody, okay, then we have to have another conversation. But right now, I mean, that's Hall's backfield.
But two is I look at the running backs that they can maybe draft, and like, do they compare to Breece Hall? Like, are you going to take him?
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, I mean, he's still going to be the guy, and quite frankly, he does, like, the bullets he's dodging in this NFL draft are probably by and large relatively small. So he's looking pretty good, and he might have a long-term extension with the Jets prior to July as well. So I don't know.
Where is Walker going in the draft?
Kenneth Walker is running back 11 and the Big Gorilla, running back 11 at 209.
So you take, and I just want to get in on this conversation here because I think it's really great, and I agree with what you guys are saying. Going down memory lane, I always said that Walker and Breece Hall were the same kind of guy, and I got a lot of scoffs about that. But Walker has proven to be a back, and I still believe in Breece Hall. So you take now that they flipped in the draft. I think when Breece Hall came out, second rounder as a rookie player, and Walker was maybe a 7th or 8th rounder. But the talent is still there, and Bill Hollywood, I applaud. If I had a cap on, I would tip it to you. You're the first guy that's come on the show here in 2026 and beat the drum for Breece Hall. And I think you're doing it in the eloquent and well-prepared way.
I think if Breece Hall maybe didn't get hurt that year, he would have been the number 1 guy on the whole board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the talent he has, So, I mean, but like you say, he's the Jets. Are they going to be any good? Are they going to score a touchdown? Are they going to be in the red zone? A lot of ifs, But when I just look at Hall when it comes to maybe wins, maybe I can work around Hall. And when I seen Hall there, I was like, I kind of like that. But
and the other thing to consider is this is where he's going right now. His ADP could move up, when we're drafting in May or July or what have you.
and I don't really know if I see it moving a whole lot.
I don't either.
Right there, late third round.
I think
once these rookies land where they're landing,
right,
hell, he could drop a little.
Right.
It's possible. As long as we're talking about the Jets, Bill, let me bring this up, and Ferrell, you can weigh in on this. Rich Simony had a report in ESPN this week that Aaron Glenn's expecting Mason Taylor to take a big step forward. He said Mason Taylor's, quote, going to have a hell of a year. Now, if you remember last year, Mason Taylor was out the last month of the season. He had a neck injury, but it sounds like that's behind him, which is good. He did have several games where he had numerous targets, including one game where he had 12 targets, had 8 a few other times as well. Only had 1 touchdown. Touchdowns are not sticky. But when you consider everybody else who's there right now, it's Breece Hall, it's Garrett Wilson. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of great things to say about Adonai Mitchell. When you think about Mason Taylor, even in a bad offense, Bill, this is a guy that we should probably be looking at as a second tight end, given in the Big Gorilla right now, his ADP over the last week and a half. You don't have to pay a big price for him. He is going as tight end 30 at the 1608. That's pretty enticing for me.
So I did my homework on him last year, and I really liked him a lot. And he was a guy I planned on drafting. But if you look, like 3 weeks, I think, before the season started, he hurt his knee. And I remember hearing that was going to be like a 5-week, 6-week injury. So the season started with him kind of being hurt. So they were kind of leaning off him at the beginning of the season. And then I didn't even think he was going to play the first 3 games of the year. And so he did play, but he kind of started out slow, but I think he's really good. And I do like him quite a bit. Now, he's another jet player, but as talent, yeah, that guy's really good tight end. He's sweet. Yeah, he's really good.
Ferrell, do you remember? I know we talked about him before last season. Obviously, he is Zach Thomas's nephew. He's Jason Taylor's son. And so when you consider the bloodlines there, he was played at a power school in LSU. He's a big boy tight end, and certainly there's a lot of athleticism. Do you remember, or can you tell me how your opinion has evolved about Mason Taylor prior to last season to basically what you saw from him last year?
I really can't, because I didn't focus on him. And Bill brought up the injury aspect, and I just never – we had our rookie tight ends last year. They at the top. And then we had Bowers coming off his first year. And we had – he just became a he just wasn't the player that I wanted to get involved with last year. And I probably should have evaluated him more closely, because I love what Bill's got to say about him. Now, we've been talking Balky Gunnar Helm. Mm-hmm. So you guys like Taylor with the commentary from the coaches, and now the quarterback situation in New York being settled such that it is. Do you like Taylor better than Gunnar Helm?
I do. I mean, there's other.
I know you were sold on that.
I mean, I like a lot of tight ends, but I mean, like, I like Gadskin a lot, Mm-hmm. But do I like Mason Taylor? Yeah, the guy's really good. I mean, I think he's got. I think I'd much rather have him over Gunnar. But
there you go. Well, then they're going right. They're going next to each other. Is that right?
Yeah, give me Taylor all day.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now as far as where these. So I say Mason Taylor was tight end 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Big Gorilla. So if you look at Gunnar Helm, he's right after him actually, tight end 31, 17 round. So very, very close. I think as volume drafters as we are, I'd be peppering about half and half. Although Bill, it sounds like you like Taylor significantly better than Helm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about that division that Gunnar Helm's in, we don't have to talk about this. But Ferrell, I'll throw this to you first. Aaron Wilson, who covers the Texans, I think for the Athletic, I could be wrong on this, was quoting D'Amico Ryan saying he didn't know if Tank Dell is going to be ready for OTAs, but he knows that he's going to be back at some point this year. I go back to the plays that Tank Dell was making when he was a rookie. He had the really awful knee injury or whatever. I'm not saying you target this guy and make him a part of your core, but Ferrell, doesn't he strike you as more than a dart throw at the end of best ball drafts, given what we've seen from him already?
Only at the end of a 26-round best ball draft.
That's it. Okay.
That's all I can say for him. And I could, I'm in love with so many of the wide receivers coming into the league that I can probably look past him now. Look past him.
I'm kind of hoping they get that Eli Stolvers, that tight end.
Yeah.
There's a player.
I think he would fit really good in Houston. That's the guy who I'd like to see them draft.
He's coming up. There's a lot of people talking about him lately. Yeah. There's a lot of steam coming up with Eli Stowers, and not to the point of where he's rivaling Kenyon Sadiq as the number one tight end in this draft. But I will say that if Stowers does get second round draft capital, we're going to see some fireworks in Dynasty Rookie Draft weekend.
I think he will. And, New Mexico State and Vanderbilt, two football powerhouses right there. But he's a situation where for those teams, he was often the best player on the field.
Yeah.
I like, Stowers and the running back from Kentucky, whose name is escaping me now. But both those guys were on that New Mexico State team together. And they both portaled out, and they're good players. McGowan is the running back I'm speaking of.
Okay.
There's a lot of attractive players to look at. And, landing spots is the determination that makes all of it. Would have loved Mason Taylor a lot differently with a different landing spot. When are we going to talk about the Jeremiah Love landing
Let's
spot?
do it now. Let's talk about it now.
Let's talk about it now because I want to hear what Billy Hollywood says. I said the Commanders very early. You corrected me and brought me onto the Tennessee Titans. So, and I was leaning Balky's way, Bill. What's it going to be?
Well, I'm leaning towards the Titans right now, but if I'm the Titans, I'd probably trade back if I'm them because I think they need too much. But I mean, I think he'll go in the top 5, and right there, either somebody, has to move up to, Seattle or, name, what, who knows. But I mean, I kind of think I would lean towards the Titans and he goes number 4.
Bill, you do a great job of player evaluation and you watch a lot of football. And I always tell fantasy players, watch a lot of football. Who does he remind you of? Who do you think he's going to be as good?
Billy Sims.
Oh, wow, there you go. Blast from the past, baby.
Yeah, he likes to have that jump, he has that kick like Billy Sims had, and I think he's one hell of an athlete. Yeah, I mean,
that he is. Statistically, from a fantasy perspective, who's he going to mirror?
I mean, I don't think I'd go as far to say Bijan Robinson. I don't think I can do that.
No.
But I mean,
it depends where
It reminds me of Genty. Like I think like that's appropriate. But Genty, I don't blame Genty for what happened last year. I think his offensive line was just absolutely terrible. But I think
if he goes to Tennessee, it's like, but
yeah.
But overall, I mean, hey, this guy's really good. I mean, this guy's got what it takes. And,
that's the thing that's frustrating to me, Bill, is like we saw, at least I was a big believer in Genty last year. And then we saw what happens when you have a poor offensive line. Tennessee should not be taking him because they have so many other holes to fill. I'd much rather, like normally what you do is you fill in with those premium positions in when you're drafting in the top half of the draft, edge rusher or cornerstone left tackle, something like, or a corner or something like that, wide receiver.
Sure.
And then once you have that nucleus together, then you draft the running back or you add the running back at the end. And I think Tennessee would be doing it a little bit backwards if they took Love there.
But don't you think they're gonna?
I mean, I was of the belief that they were going to, and it would not surprise me. But I think I'm coming off it a little bit right now.
They're going to get those offensive linemen. They're going to coach them up, and they're going to draft the running back. And you know what, guys? I think I've said this on the show before. It might have caused some people to scoff, but I think he's the next Christian McCaffrey in fantasy.
Wow, that is aggressive, Ferrell.
In a couple years, he's going to be the number 1, number 2 guy off the board.
I like him better. I like him better than the Raiders guy. I think. Where did the Raiders guy go to college?
Genty went to Boise State.
And so I was a little nervous on him. I thought he was, because I would look at guys like Dylan Sampson, right? And I think he played for Tennessee, if I'm correct.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But when I seen what they did there, and I couldn't believe, because I would have drafted Dylan Sampson before a lot of running backs that were drafted. And when I would do the tape, he did everything better than a lot of guys that had such a good offensive line. They were like Emmitt Smith, And so when I looked at Dylan Sampson, he did all the hard work, end zone. So I really like Dylan Sampson, but yeah, it's tough. Sometimes you can hit these guys and sometimes you can't, like I remember calling Ferrell earlier this year and I said, hey, I put a hefty bet down on Chambliss to, win the Heisman. I watched this guy all the way from, Grand Rapids all the way through, Ferris to, Ole Miss. And man, I watch out for Chambliss, in a couple of years from now. I think he's an NFL quarterback. And what I seen from Ole Miss, and I seen, even that wide receiver from Ole Miss, I watched the progression from him, and he from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, that guy was made leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just these guys can progress, and when you see it, that's you can kind of tell a difference. And so Sham Bliss is going to be a quarterback we see in the NFL, and I think he's going to be a good one.
I'm excited about him. It just stinks that we got to wait another year now because
yeah, for sure. A lot can happen, but I like his chances. I think he's
Bill. You had mentioned
thinking ahead.
Yes, Bill. You had mentioned Dylan Sampson, and he was one of the many running backs that got drafted last year that we were fantasy owners are very excited to draft. Perhaps none more exciting and maybe even more juice and more excitement than Ashton Genty or maybe even Marion Hampton. And maybe it was because he was so polarizing. Because, if you like TreVeyon Henderson, you had to really like TreVeyon Henderson. There's a lot of people who did. And I want to get into this first email we have tonight from Aaron in Clarksville, Illinois. What are the chances that TreVeyon Henderson pays off his ADP this year? Appreciate you. That is Aaron in Clarksville, Illinois. Aaron, we appreciate you. If we look at the never too early best ball, Bill, ADP, running back 22 is where Henderson's going. It's the 411 right now after Judkins, before DeAndre Swift. Is he going to pay off that late fourth round ADP this year, in your opinion?
I think he's really close to that. The one thing that scared me about him is Stevenson ain't going away completely. And after he got hurt, he still came back and still shared about the same amount of snaps as the other guy. So, but if you look at TreVeyon Henderson and you look at his stats, hey, they're not bad, right? So, I'm leaning off of him right now, but does he pay off his ADP? That's. I mean, I would set the over under right there. So, probably a guy I'm leaning off, but I think he's decent. I'm probably just not a guy I'm looking for.
I'll say this in regards to Henderson, Ferrell. I'll let you weigh in. He's going after Scadaboo and Judkins. Scadaboo is a guy that I kind of liked, but the fact that the Giants are still being mentioned in the same breath as Jeremiah Love is frustrating after they pursued Kenneth Walker in free agency. So I don't know what that current regime thinks of Scadaboo. And right. Judkins came off that nasty ankle injury last year. So I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in the start of the season. Perhaps good, perhaps maybe not as good. Dylan Sampson looked pretty good in his stead last year. And then you have Henderson. And then after that, you have Swift sharing a backfield with Monangai. You have Montgomery going to the top. And I know that they went to they upgraded the offensive line, but you still got Woody Marks catching passes. Bashal Tootin after that, who's sharing a backfield with Chris Rodriguez. I don't know, with the electricity, the explosivity, if that's a word.
I like that word.
Explosivity for TreVeyon Henderson. At the end of the fourth round, I think there's a lot to like there, and Bill might be off him a little bit. I think I might be talking myself into him at this point.
Wow, I can't say I'm completely off of him.
No, but you're leaning. You're leaning away. You're leaning.
Well, Bill, I think if you look at what he did with what he got, he made the most out of the opportunities he had. Less than 200 carries, but almost 1,000 yards.
One thing,
damn near double-digit touchdowns. He did so much, given the carries that he had. I really like the player to have a slightly bigger role and slightly bigger numbers. I think you can't go wrong with this player, despite the fact that Stevenson is there. And in some ways, that might help him and keep him fresh. I don't think guys that carry the ball 250, 60 plus times are generally going to average 5 yards a carry. But this guy does.
Right.
And he's, he's
got a burst. I mean, he's that's where I say, like a guy with Breece Hall, I can work around a guy like Breece Hall, so I just don't know if I'm willing to draft him or not yet.
Henderson had 1,130 combined yards last year, rushing and receiving. Did hit double-digit touchdowns as well. Now, to Bill's point, I'll say this. He did have 2 different games with 140-plus yards rushing, and in both of those games, he had a pair of touchdowns. So if you take it, you should say this about anybody, I guess, but you take away his 2 best games, all of a sudden those stats don't look all that great. But he did do them. He did put them up. And I certainly understand the trepidation for Henderson this year as well. I think I'm with Bill. And Bill and I are kind of saying the same thing. I think we both think he's very close to paying off at 4.11 ADP. But Bill's probably on the bearish side. I'm on the bullish side, which is fine, because it's all range of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, he's like I said, I like the player. It's just that I don't know what his complete ceiling is. I can't get that.
Is there a situation that exists, Bill, where you would draft both New England running backs, considering the wide variance of their draft positions?
No.
And you don't do that a lot, but you were saying something earlier about a unique way you have of working with handcuffs. Talk to us about that.
Well, if I'm taking a number 1 running back, I didn't last year, but I'll be damned to tell you, I'm in a redraft. I'm going to back him up.
Number 1 running back being a first round.
Yeah, and even if I have a bye, like for instance, last year Carolina had a bye week 14, so I thought Hubbard and Rico were both a pretty good steal. So you can back up, or you just need to back up one of your running backs. I don't care who they are, really, exactly. But I like to at least have a little depth back there by a backup, especially if he's my number 1 running back. I want to kind of back him up if I think he plays for a team like, Christian McCaffrey, or, that a coach is going to mostly go with that guy. So like, for instance, Bijan, you knew it was going to be Tyler Algier. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't back him up with Tyler Algier and maybe move up around, I think it's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
But that's just
and those players certainly are not interchangeable talents, but they were understanding opportunities. What about if you had a Derrick Henry, a player that I don't think there's a handcuff for? But
I agree. But if they're
run back.
But if they do play on Thursday, I would maybe take a nice nab at one of those guys to, back up just to, see if I can hit him if he does get hurt that game. But I agree. You have to, you don't want to take a backup not knowing if he's going to share duties with the third stringer.
Yeah.
So like Pacheco, if Gibbs got hurt, is Pacheco going to be it? Is it going to be Reynolds? Are they going to split the duties? So I wouldn't probably really want Pacheco so much as my backup in Detroit.
I'm seeing that in the drafts too. Pacheco.
I wasn't too happy, so I'm hoping maybe they draft another running back, but I'm not really too happy with Pacheco.
I don't know who it was. It was some Lions beat writer. It could have been 20-minute. I'm not sure, but he said something to the effect of don't be surprised if Detroit drafts a running back to be more of the Montgomery, with Pacheco being like a third string type guy on that team this year. So it remains to be seen.
I'm hoping the Lions they draft. I was doing some tape on a guy out of Texas A&M, Howell, edge rusher, and when I watched him, he changes games, and so I kind of hope they draft him. That's who I'm hoping the Lions draft.
Cassius Howell, opposite Aiden Hutchinson, would certainly not be what the Packers, Vikings, and Bears want to be. Weekend.
Yeah, you watched them. Yeah.
Speaking of the Bears, let's do another email here for you, Bill, and Ferrell as well. This one comes to us courtesy of Jim in Fort Worth, Texas. How much do you think Rome Odunze's foot injury affected him down the stretch last year? Jim, we appreciate it. Ferrell, I don't know if you and I have talked to Odunze, but I will say this. No DJ Moore in Chicago this year. And while everybody's talking up Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, and why wouldn't they? Because they were picked after Ben Johnson was hired. This is probably people use the term handpicked. I don't know if Ben Johnson handpicked him. I think he was just maybe twisting the arm of Brian Poles saying, hey, get me these guys. But Odunze is still a first-round pick the year before. Granted, he wasn't Ben Johnson's guy, but there's still some talent there. We know the foot injury definitely affected him. But this 2026 season, are we paying too much attention to Burden and Loveland and not enough to Odunze?
Oh, he's a very, very attractive number 2 receiver. I think it's a situation where the new coach, I don't think he entered that room and said, well, I don't like Odunze. I don't think that was very much part of his conversation. So, there seems to be each year a little bit of hype around Bears players. I think it's because of somewhat of the fan base and some of the fact that you just can't separate your numbers from your heart and your expectations. So but I love the way the guy plays football. And sure, if you had a foot injury, if you have any kind of foot injury, it's going to affect the way you play football. So he's one of my favorite players to watch this coming year, and I might watch someone else draft him and watch that guy beat me, and that would be one of the players that I would hate to play. And so I'm going to draft him some places, yes.
Hey, Baki, I forgot, and I sent Ferrell a picture, and this is what it was.
That looks great.
I was like, okay.
And you've got the beard to match, and it's real. My barber is on injured reserve. 2 more weeks, I may just. Oh, I think you should put that back on. There's 2 more weeks, it will definitely be looking exactly like.
It's wild because anybody who's just randomly popping into the show on YouTube, am I watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour or some sort of Christopher Lloyd Comic Con? Future Comic Con right now. We don't know.
No, I like Roma Doomsday. I mean, I think I think his numbers are going to be better than they were last year. I mean, he had 90 targets and only caught 44 balls.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that can get better. I think the targets without DJ Moore are going to go up. So, and 6 touchdowns. I mean, that should go up. So, I thought he looked really good by what I saw, and I think I would probably look to be drafting him. I'm really high on him. I'm really high on Ibuka, and so those are guys I kind of thought.
He's an interesting stab in the early 6th round of the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, because I think if you look at the guys going around him, Ferrell and I on Wednesday night talked up Terry McLaurin. And he's going right ahead of Odunze. And then right after Odunze, you have DJ Moore, who is getting a lot of hype right now to be, ostensibly the number 1 receiver for Buffalo. And then right after that, you had Christian Watson, who looked really, really good at the end of last season. Granted, that was without Tucker Kraft, but there's definitely people believing that Watson can have a big-time season this year without Romeo Doubs. He could be the go-to wide receiver on that team as well. So Odunze, you pepper him in there. There's a lot of different ways you can go at.
And all those players have a more impressive resume than Odunze, but very few have that ceiling.
But none of them have the draft capital of Odunze, too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy where you could swing and miss, or you could hit a home run, But I think I look for consistency a lot, and because I got to get to that 150 points, average. And so if I'm looking at 1,800 points, is he going to give me that consistency from week to week that I need to get to? And that's going to be the question that people have to ask themselves.
Or is are you going to keep watching balls fly over his head?
Yeah. And I'm guessing you'll probably see that, but I'm a firm believer in the coach. And so I'm high on a lot of Chicago players, but I'm also with you, Ferrell. They got the grass field, the bad weather. And so I lean kind of off Bears players myself, but that's
it sure makes you want to watch the Detroits play on that carpet, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Detroits, let's talk about your Lions here, Bill. This email comes in from George in Boston. How's it going, guys? Why or why not is Sam Laporta in for a big season? Keep up the wonderful work. That is George in Boston. Bill, I think I talked up Sam Laporta, and by talking him up, I mean talking about him. I don't think I really talked him up. I have some concerns with him this year. But maybe you can kind of dissuade me of that and tell me that Laporta is in for a big 2026 season.
I'm not going to tell you that. I mean,
It's too close to the heart, Balky.
Right.
You're in a sensitive area there.
I'm a big Lions player, and I think he's a great player. I do think he's really good. But, I look at his numbers, 80, 60, down to 25. He had that injury after his first year, and then he came back the second year, and you could just tell that whole year he wasn't right. And then last year, kind of more of the same thing. And so, there's a big group of tight ends out there, and he could be a great player, but I think he could be really good. I'm not really confident on it right now.
You got to hit it in the FFPC, Bill. You got to hit it.
I'm worried about the back injury unless I start hearing some positive stuff. And granted, it's only April. There's plenty of time for me to hear, like, oh yeah, it's totally healed. He's great. He's doing all this stuff, full go. Then I feel better about it. But I do know the investment that they made into Tesla. And maybe we see more Tesla, Williams, and St. Brown out there at the expense of Laporta. Maybe not. I don't know.
Bill, I don't know if you heard, but Michael Pittman played last year with a broken back.
He did.
Yeah, I drafted him. I always liked Pittman. I think Pittman's a pretty good player. But
I think Pittman's back broke last year under the weight of all the hype Ferrell had been giving him.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, here I like him, and every week he's pumping him up, talking about Pittman. I'm like, okay.
The last thing I want to ask you about here tonight, and I'm not the only one here as we move off of Laporta. Let's talk about a quarterback here. Long Island is where Dennis lives, and he sends us that email from Long Island. Dear Balky and Ferrell and Bill, obviously, as I'll throw this to you as well. Do you feel like Lamar Jackson is being undervalued in the never too early FFPC tournaments? Thank you for the email, Dennis. If I look at my handy dandy Mojo ADP, I can tell you guys that quarterback 2 is where he's going right now. Perhaps, but not till the 502 for the never too.
Oh, that's pretty early. I thought he'd seen him going around about the 6th round.
So maybe the question is, are FFPC owners valuing him too high? Given that, devil's advocate on Lamar Jackson, new head coach, new OC, coming off the injury, he's on the wrong side of 30 now. I mean, there are some at least pink flags or yellow flags rather than red flags on Lamar Jackson here. And Ahsoka, early 5th round pick into him as the second quarterback off the board. Bill, I don't know. I mean, you're the king of like being good stewards with your draft capital in fantasy drafts. I don't know if that's being the best steward of building a team to draft Lamar Jackson that high.
I've been a Lamar fan for a long time, but last year, I don't think he's over 30. I think he's younger than.
Is he right? Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
I thought he was like 28 or 29, but I thought he was still pretty. I think feels like he's been in the league forever.
He just turned 29 in January, so he'll turn 30 in January. There you go.
Okay, so
Rocky thought Cousins on Wednesday was 40. He thinks I'm 74. He thinks I'm 74. He's aging everybody, Bill. But you have the spirit of youth, so he's not picking on you.
But I'm gonna have a hard time drafting him. I did when I really did the eye test, and I just didn't. I seen some things that I just didn't like, and so I might, for the first time ever, start leaning to go quarterback a little bit later this year for the first time. But I do really, I love Buffalo's quarterback. I like going quarterback kind of a little bit earlier than most people maybe like to. But I want, like some quarterbacks will lose you the year because. Like I always just say, Phillip Rivers, never draft him because he has so many bust games that, you can't win. So you got to have that quarterback that gives you that consistency. And Lamar's been great, but I'm not leaning towards Lamar this year so far.
Especially that high. I mean, it'd be different if he was like quarterback 5 quarterback 6 or something like that, where he slips properly after an injury-riddled season that caused his numbers not to be as high as they normally. It's like everybody forgot about that.
Like Ertz is going a lot later.
Yeah,
maybe AJ Brown does leave, or maybe he doesn't, or whatever. I don't know. But
Ertz is quarterback 7th round.
I look and I go, wow, geez, I can get these other quarterbacks, and how much different are they going to be?
I got a question about your Detroit Lions quarterback. I love one of my biggest days in football is when they announce the schedule. So I love your Detroit Lions running back because I want to draft him and I want to start him at home. I want to start him in Detroit.
I don't blame you. Yeah,
and then I can figure the road out with someone else. And if I can find somebody, in the double-digit rounds that compares and has a favorable schedule, as much as we can predict the schedule. But I really don't care who comes in to play Detroit in Detroit. I like Goff's situation, and it makes for a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I like Goff. I mean, I think he's a solid player. I think he can read defenses like a genius. I mean, the guys can do that. I mean, they like throwing touchdowns, and so they can light up scoreboards, and so. He's, I kind of like Goff, he's a good player. The guy I'm leaning way off of is Stafford. I think he's in for a really bad season. And so I'd much rather have a guy like Dak or, way over like probably Dak anyway over Stafford, but Stafford's a guy I'm not in at all. I would be in danger zone if you have Stafford, I think.
You know what I heard? I was listening to Chad Parsons and Jordan McNamara talk about this on the Dynasty Think Tank podcast the other day. And I don't know if this is true because I didn't fact check it. Chad said he did fact check it. Apparently the leader at the quarterback position in points per game last year was one Brock Purdy, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And he's going right around that Prescott, Stafford, Purdy. Mahomes is right there as well as quarterback 14. Which is very, very interesting. And then you see Goff at quarterback 16 there. So there's, Bill, you talk about waiting on quarterback. That's like 5 or 6 reasons right there to wait on quarterback.
For sure. Yeah.
Stafford, who I know you're on.
You might, since you see all that, you might even see Buffalo's quarterback start to go a little bit later just because of that. And so I wouldn't mind seeing him start. I wouldn't be surprised you start seeing him drop maybe, down half a round or another. So
he is round 3 right now in the Never Too Early tournament. Josh Allen's still the number 1 quarterback.
Always.
And certainly DJ Moore helps him out a little bit as far as his ADP goes. But we'll see. I can see him. I can see him going in the 4th round, middle of the 4th round when it comes to, right before the season starts. I think he's gonna. I guarantee you he's going to drop a little bit, and and I'm going to be happy if he does because I like Kincaid, and so and I do like Buffalo's quarterback, so I'd like to see him drop. But if I think about it, I think there's just going to be other players that I see are going to be moving up and quarterbacks moving down. Yep. Wise words from the sage-like Bill Hollywood. Who joins us here tonight on Extra Reps. So much fun, dude, to have you on, to talk to you, to pick your brain. So I guess the final question we have for you, did we convince you to not retire from fantasy football? Are we still going to see Hollywood in the draft streets this season?
I know I still got 6 teams available in the main event still.
You gotta use them up.
So how we diversify it and stuff like that.
And I know you've already booked your room at Caesars to come play in Kentucky. You know how I know this?
Why?
I booked it for you.
Bill, do not be a stranger. Good luck. I will wish you good luck in all your drafts this year, and hopefully we see you again real soon. Thanks for coming on the show tonight, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Have fun, guys.
Absolutely,
Billy.
Thank you, Bill. We'll see you. That is Bill Hollywood, the 6-time FFPC Main Event League champion, joining us tonight for some fun, frivolity, and a little bit of fantasy football.
Don't you love him? Don't you just love him? He helped me tonight. He's got me understanding a little bit more of the drafts that I've been doing.
Yeah.
Why players are going in certain places.
And that's what we strive to do on this show. And
Yeah, help me.
if you want to put that to good use, check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Main Event, Super Sweet 16, or the Sweet 16, excuse me. And, of course, all the draft masters going on there. There's a format for you at KFFSC.com. Ferrell, I will bid you adieu. Enjoy. I would say the week off next week, but I know you're not off.
The week of work, but when I do return to you, Balky, on the 15th, we're going to have a major KFFSC announcement.
Oh, my goodness. I cannot wait. Counting down the days for that. Less than 2 weeks away from that big Kentucky announcement. Thank you so much for carving out some time again tonight, Ferrell. I will talk with you again in a couple of weeks.
My pleasure, Bob.
That is the definitive commissioner of Fantasy Football 1, Ferrell Elliott, hopping aboard tonight. I want to thank Bill Hollywood. I want to thank Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. Next week, HSFF Hour will be back with myself and a special guest co-host since Ferrell will be off. Thursday night, and by the way, in case you missed Insider Access last night with myself and Bob Harris, that was a lot of fun. Check that out. Football Guys and SiriusXM's own Bob Harris joined me for 2 full hours of fantasy football. And coming up on FFPC Insider Access next Thursday night, I know I booked it. I just got to give you who it is coming up here so you have something to look forward to. It is going to be Drew Davenport, also from Football Guys. So you get back-to-back Football Guys on, and it'll be good to get some legal clarification on Puka Nacua, Rashi Rice, and more once we have the legal brief. Drew Davenport himself joining me on Insider Access next Thursday. And then next Friday, we'll have another Extra Reps episode for you as well, live at 10 p.m. Eastern time. That will be a lot of fun. Watch out for the Dynasty Orphans that we still have, some as little as $1. Getting down there, only a few hundred orphans left. Check that out if you want to play fantasy football year round. Never too early Superflex Best Ball Tournament, never too early Best Ball Tournament available. $10,000 and $40,000 grand prizes respectively. Just $35 to enter that Superflex tournament as well. The Big Gorilla is back. A $1 million grand prize, just $350 to enter. How can you go wrong? 7 Bananas promo is live. The early Rampage tournament is live as well. 2 tournaments for the price of 1 entry fee. Details and registration available at myffpc.com. And if you're always looking to play high-stakes fantasy football, but the entry fee was just that barrier keeping you out, check out the Baby Gorilla. $125 to enter. You're still eligible for a $100,000 grand prize. Exact same format, rules, and setup as the Big Gorilla. All available at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, comment on the video, share with your friends, share with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be next. Oh, I forgot. Next Tuesday, RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown is live for April. So we welcome aboard next Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time, which is the next time we go live. We will have on one Mike Stibnicki will join. I think that's his debut on the High Stakes Lowdown. I know he's been on the HSFF Hour before, but Mike Stibnicki will be joining me to talk some dynasties, some best ball, a lot of good stuff coming up from him. That will be Tuesday night, 10 p.m. So it's a 4-show week next week. Stibnicki on Tuesday, HSFF Hour on Wednesday, Davenport on Thursday, Extra Reps on Friday. It's going to be a baller week. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Just a reminder, yours truly will be in the Big Gorilla draft rooms this weekend. So hopefully you can draft some teams. We're coming up on the NFL draft, some pretty good value out there. ADP is going to shift soon. Get in before it does. Draft in the Big Gorilla, win $1 million with the FFPC. Do it so this weekend. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.